All right, this is Rick with RW Outdoors back again for another little video. Today we're going to talk about the Andalusia Lions Club Physically Challenged hunt that I got to go on this past weekend, which was a really cool experience. I've got some neat pictures, got some good pictures, some videos I'll be showing you of the 2 deer I was able to harvest out there. But first things first, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that YouTube stuff, so you can follow along and see all the stuff that I have planned for the future, because we are going to be doing some neat things. I do have a lot of cool stuff planned, so hit all those buttons so you can follow along. So this hunt this last weekend was Andalusia, Alabama. I left Friday. I got up early Friday morning, hit the jiu-jitsu gym, Gracie Bar, Green Cove Springs, where I train, and at 6 a.m. and then promptly after class ended, I got in the truck and headed on the 5-hour drive to Andalusia. Once I got out to Andalusia, I got there about 1 o'clock. We met everybody that was, the guides, the landowners, the people putting on the hunt, and the attendees, like myself. We were all out at the range and we were able to sight in our rifles and make sure we were all on zero. I had my AR-10-308 with my ATN X-Celsior day-night vision scope on it. I knew it was all set, but whenever you get a chance to check zero right before a hunt, you do it for sure. So I went ahead and took the opportunity, got my gun out, took some shots at 100 yards. I was all good, so I felt good about that. So I put the rifle away and just kind of mingled around and met with the other people and watched some of the kids and stuff shoot. One of the things that was unique about this hunt is I've been on some other disabled veterans hunts in the past, but this hunt wasn't specifically limited to disabled veterans. It was for physically challenged people. So there was, there was disabled vets like myself, there was some disabled adults, and there was also some physically challenged kids that were on this hunt. And man, talk about an eye-opening experience to see the equipment and the will and the drive that these kids have to get outside, shooting, hunting. Their positive attitudes, there was smiles and just happiness all weekend long out of these kids. It was really something I enjoyed, just being around that kind of positivity. A lot of times in life, it's easy to be negative, but these kids had it going on, man, and they had all the equipment, and I think most of them all harvested deer with the help of their guides and their parents. It was really a cool experience. Once we got finished up at the range, we went to the athletic center there in Andalusia. The city of Andalusia donated use of the center there. It's a big basketball court indoors to the Lions Club, so that we could have our dinners and our raffles and all that stuff there. So Friday night they had a nice barbecue dinner for us, which was great. We all got to meet each other, sit around and just shoot the shit a little bit more, and then it was back to the hotel at like 7:30 that night, because 4:30 in the morning comes really early. So I went back to the hotel, crashed out, got up at 4:30 in the morning and got ready for the first day of hunting. Saturday we got up, went back to the basketball court, met our guides. They had breakfast set up there and had a bunch of to-go biscuits and different cookies and different things that we could grab to take with us out to the stand, which was really cool. My guide's name was Chris Nolan. He had donated use of his land for a few of us to hunt on, which was, that's almost unheard of these days. And he had a lot of good deer on his property, and he knew it, and he had pictures of it all. So the fact that he volunteered that is pretty amazing. After I gathered up my breakfast, he took me out there and got me in my blind. I was in a ground blind, looking over a bean field that was probably 75, 80 yards wide and about 200 yards long. I spent the entire day, the first day in that blind, and I didn't really see anything. Now, it was like 70 degrees that day, which is unusually warm for a winter day in Alabama. So not seeing anything wasn't too surprising. We can't do anything about the weather, and when it's that warm out, the deer may not be moving. Anyways, a day in a blind is better than a day at work, whether I saw deer or not. I had my rifle set up on a tripod, my AR-10 with the ATN scope, and I got some pictures I'll attach into the video here so you can kind of see what I was seeing and what my setup was. But like I said, I didn't see anything. Last light was like 5:40, so I left the blind at 5:40 p.m. and went back to the athletic center for dinner. Now, the Saturday night dinner was something really special. They put out a huge spread for us of all homemade meal, dishes, and there was probably 20 or 30 different dishes, which I have pictures of. I'll put on the video, and all of the dishes were wild game. There was fresh caught bass, fresh caught catfish, of course, lots of venison. There was turkey, there was antelope, deer chili, you name it, man. It was a feast, and it was a feast of wild game, and it was something like I felt privileged to be able to sit there and eat that, because it's not easy to come by some of that stuff. And all the volunteers and stuff cooked all this for us. They didn't buy it. So that was really, really a cool opportunity. Another great evening of camaraderie and stuff with all the other hunters. And they did, door prizes and stuff. They had a goodie bag for us, which was really awesome for all the hunters. And then they did a raffle to raise funds for next year's hunt, which was really cool. And then they gave away some really good stuff. There was like a $300 rangefinder, and then there was quite a few game cameras and things like that. So there was some really cool prizes. It was neat. It was fun to watch, fun to do. Another really good evening. Once that was finished up, back to the hotel again, because Sunday morning, 4:30 a.m. again. So back into bed early, even though I tried to watch some of the football game. Watched my Ravens lose, which kind of sucked, but back in bed early and up again at 4:30 a.m. Now, the next day, I went and grabbed my breakfast and stuff the same way, and went back out to the property where I was hunting, which the property that Chris put me on was actually an old dairy, and the old dairy buildings and stuff were there, so it was actually really neat to see. I kind of really appreciated the history that's there on that property, but he put me in a different blind that was only maybe a couple hundred yards away from the blind I was in the previous day, but it was overlooking a different field in a different pasture. It was a bit bigger area. And it was much, much colder this day. It was in the 30s all day, which was, excellent for deer movement. Excuse me. The only problem we had that day was it was kind of windy, which isn't great for deer. So on one hand we had the cold weather, which was great, and on the other hand it was windy, which can cause the deer to stay up in the trees. So I sat there all day and didn't see anything. Lots of squirrels, lots of birds, which was fun to watch through my scope. But about last light again, I think was like 5:49. About an hour before last light, like 4:40, I saw two doe come out of the woods. And wouldn't you know it, the hunt, there was no rules on what we could and could not shoot. Obviously not trying to shoot, fawns, but does were on the table. So after sitting in a stand for 2 days straight and thinking this is my last hour of hunting, I'm for sure not passing on a doe. We like to eat meat. I'm primarily a meat hunter. I don't get me wrong, I love a nice set of antlers, but primarily I love to take meat home and give it to my friends and pass it out to family and stuff, and that's what I really enjoy from hunting. So I was not going to pass the opportunity on a doe. So anyways, this doe was about 100 yards out. I've got video through my X-Celsior that I'll attach to the video now, so you should be seeing that. Put a shot on it at 100 yards. Now my AR-10's a 308, so we're shooting 180 grain silicone tip rounds made by North Florida Ammo. Put a shot right where I wanted it, right through the ribs. It was quartered away from me a little bit, and the deer ran off into the woods behind it. It was only about 5 yards from the woods edge. There was an hour of daylight left, so I sat and waited for the hour before we really went looking for that deer. Or for a little bit anyways, before we went looking for that deer. And then I called the guide, Chris, and he came out and we went looking. There was no blood at the spot where I shot it, but Chris went kind of walking a grid into the woods, and about 20 yards into the woods he found the blood, and then from there it was a pretty easy track. It was a good blood trail, and we found it. What I thought was a doe turned out to be a button buck. At 100 yards I couldn't tell. Which is all okay, because it was a legal shoot, and there was nothing wrong with shooting a button buck by the rules we were following. So it's meat in the freezer is the way I look at it. Chris took the deer back with him, and you know, there was still 45 minutes of light. He's like, hey, stay in the stand. You never know. Maybe something else comes out. So I stayed in the stand for the next 45 minutes or so, didn't see anything. And then I packed up all my stuff and headed back to the athletic center for dinner on Sunday night. While I was at dinner on Sunday night, Chris came up to me and said, hey, you know, you're staying tonight, because my hotel room, which was paid for by them, was covered through Sunday night, so I could leave on Monday. He said, do you have to be home in a hurry tomorrow? And I said, no, not especially. He said, well, would you like to come hunt another property of mine with me in the morning for a few hours before you have to go? Who's going to say no to that? I certainly didn't say no to that. And I was floored at the opportunity. He didn't have to do that. That was just, you know, not part of the hunt, not part of the Lions Club thing. Just he's like, hey man, you know, maybe tomorrow if you come out with me, we'll get another one. I couldn't thank Chris enough. And I certainly jumped at that opportunity. So the next morning, 4:30 in the morning again, which I had planned to sleep in that Monday, but you know, you do what you got to do. I met Chris out at the other property, and he put me in an elevated stand this time. And there was some corn out, you know, it's legal in Alabama. We had bait licenses, so I sat there from about 5:30, 6 o'clock until thinking that I'm going to sit until 10. It was really cold again, really cold. In fact, I need to work on my my boots and my socks, because they were not up to the task for that cold weather, and my feet were frozen. And I was kind of in that mode. You all know when you're hunting, you know, if you put a time, excuse me, if you put a time that you're going to sit to, you sit to it. Because you know, if you say I'm going to sit till 10 and you sit till 9:55, you know what's happening at 9:57. That deer is going to walk out. So, you know, I'd said I'd sit till 10. About 9:30, I was counting my minutes. Boy, it was cold. My feet were frozen. I was frozen. Hoping something would walk out, but I was really just looking for 10 o'clock. Well, about 9:45, a buck walks to the corn right out in front of me about 40 yards. Not a huge buck, but definitely something I would be happy to shoot. And I was able to harvest him. It was about a 40-yard shot, kind of the same situation, no blood at the shooting spot, ran about 30, 40 yards into the woods. The woods weren't nearly as thick at this spot, so I could watch him go. And what the funny thing is Chris was walking to my stand right as I shot. So I shot, and then I hear, well, that's good timing from behind me, because he was walking up the back of the stand. Anyways, the buck runs off 30, 40 yards down by the creek, and we go tracking it, and sure enough, there he is, dead. Very happy with the opportunity to take a second deer and to get a buck. And this buck was one he'd actually been watching on camera. It was he called it the question mark buck. Apparently, from what we can gather, when it was in velvet, it probably broke one of its antlers, but it didn't break off all the way. It just bent over at a 90, and then it regrew back together. So one antler is kind of bent into a shape, and then when it hooked around, it looks just like a question mark. So it's kind of a unique buck, even though it's not very big. I'm kind of tickled with it. It has some character. I think it's kind of neat. We got it skinned out in the freezer, and you know, by noon I was on my way back home to Florida, and you know, got home at 6 or 7 that night. All in all, what an experience. Andalusia Alabama is a cool place. It's a very cool little city. The people were all wonderful. To get to see these physically challenged kids hunt, the equipment they used, the technology they were using, and just the smiles on their face and the positivity they exuded in everything we did all weekend. I think that's my biggest takeaway from it. I love to hunt. I love the fact that I shot a couple deer, and now I have a bunch of meat I can give away to my friends. But number one thing I took from this weekend was it was so cool to see these kids smiling and just having a blast when it would be so easy for them to not. I really want to put out a good word to the Lions Club of Andalusia for putting this on, as well as, you know, some of the locals around here in Florida that kind of help people get to these types of events. I know there's a gentleman on Facebook named Festus Poti, and I'm probably screwed at that pronunciation up, but I think he's the one that posted it and the one I saw, and he does a lot of work for these groups and these kids, raising money so that they can get these off-road chairs and things like that so that they can go hunt. it really was overall just a really cool experience, and I feel blessed that I was able to do it. I hope you liked the video. I hope you like what I have to say, and like I said, I'll attach some pictures and videos to this, and we'll see you next time.